It's a little bit early, maybe at 3 o'clock, or it is okay to start here.
Okay.
Maybe 10 minutes or something. I will show something.
Yeah, okay,
for
because
tomorrow.
now it's almost one. It's almost one, and then because the lecture will be start at around 1:15, so you can.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so I will start. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. This is KUNCI from Kyoto, especially in the suburban housing area. And I like to use the 10 minutes today here for the little bit of preparation for tomorrow's lecture by the Muko City young officers. And here I am standing in front of the small station, railway station, and here is the one of the very important historic sites, but this is in the underground. So maybe this is one of the example to have a historic site in underground and to utilize that for the more daily life. So I like to show a little bit about the situation. So I will change the direction. Okay. Oh, sorry. My hand. You can see the small station there. Yeah, there is the railway station. And to have just 1 minute walk from here, this is very normal suburban town. And sorry. And here we can find the neighborhood park. This is one of the historic sites with the very old capital ruins 1,200 years ago. These places used to be the capital before the Kyoto became capital, but that was the only 10 years from 784 until 794. So it was a little bit difficult to identify this is a historical site. And at the same time, during the 1950s or 60s, the kind of the research about the ruins of the such old capital was almost made by the citizens, actually. There is a very few interest about the historical site here during the 1950s or 60s. So it is very important to collaborate the citizens here. And you can find, this is one of the evidence of the starting of the research by the citizens. This is the memorial 1955, the first findings of the old ruins in underground. You can see that this is the explanation that here, just here, the part of the old ruins of the gate was found in this underground. And this is the first point. This is really the part of the little bit old house. And these are the housing area. But at the same time, we can find kind of the explanation. This is the maps for the little bit wider area of the Muko city, where is the historic site and where should be visited. But actually here is almost no touristic attraction. So this is more like a communities area. And actually, this is the kind of the exhibition of the old location of the capital. This used to be the main palace site 1,000 to 200 years ago. So they made partly like a kind of the landscape exhibition in the neighborhood park. And this is also the explanation, especially about what was found here. And the situation like this, actually, it is the site for the park, and here we can see the such exhibition now, but actually the all the capital ruins are very, very wide. So it means that in this park, it is also a little bit possible to show something. All the sites around this park is a housing area. So there's many more things in the underground of the housing spaces, but they didn't destroy the houses. They just keep the ruins in the underground by keeping the house. So, you know, keeping the house is the same time, at the same time, conservation of the ruins in the underground. So it is very important here to keep the housings, not to make a very huge urbanization. This is very important things here. But then this is very difficult to identify. This is the very historic site, actually. So you can see almost no touristic people. This is more like for the community spaces. But at the same time, here is a little bit small guidance facility. Konnichiwa. She is the star. And we can find the maps, which is the very attractive spaces to go around here to find the historic site each by each. For example, this is the capital city ruins. And this is very, very old, more old ruins, like maybe 1,500 years ago. There is something like this. This is each very old tombs. And this is the traditional house. This is a very traditional, very important shrine. Maybe this is one of the most famous shrine in Kyoto too. And this is also the very old thing, old one. This is each one. And we can find some guidebooks, and we can find what was the excavation and what was the findings here. Okay, like this. It is rather small, but this is a kind of underground. Thank you. So I like to show this situation for the tomorrow's lecture by the Taniguchi-san from Moko City, because we are a little bit collaborating to manage this kind of the invisible attraction of the historic site with the citizens to keep the peaceful situation. And at the same time, there's so many people should be more interested in. So please utilize this short tour for the tomorrow's lecture. Thank you very much. It is finished now. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kanki Sensei. So we're going to see more tomorrow, right? At 3 p.m. Jakarta time. Is it 3 p.m.? After the presentation from Taniguchi-san from Moko City and my presentation, right?
Yes. Or is it... So I will make a presentation with Taniguchi-san. We collaborate for the presentation tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So it's like a duet.
Yeah,
So it's like a duet.
actually I'm a translator.
Okay. Is it going
Right.
to be? Is it going to be an outdoor presentation again?
Hmm.
Oh, so it
Uh,
will be outdoor.
I think I will make a little bit short movie tomorrow, just before our presentation with Taniguchi-san, little bit more, and we will do the explanation about, especially explanation about the kind of the planning, how to how to empower the attractiveness of the historic sites, and at the same time what we are doing with the citizens.
Okay,
Tomorrow.
so yeah, okay, so tomorrow. Okay, so this is only the teaser. So everyone here, outside the workshop participant, please join us again at 1 p.m. tomorrow.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah, thank you
because
very much.
yeah,
Yeah.
because Kanki Sensei will show more. Today is only a teaser,
Yeah.
but it will be more
I like
even
to
from
show
the
the
city procurement.
situation. Yeah, you can see.
Okay,
So
okay.
please,
Oh,
please remember this is just a housing area. From the Zoom video, this
yeah.
looks like a little bit large park, but actually this is very tiny park, actually. Very small park. So all the land around here is the house. Because this is a suburban area of Kyoto metropolitan. Okay. For
Okay,
tomorrow.
so formerly a palace for Japan, like a capital palace, but now it's a residential area, and many people live there.
Yeah.
And the palace is actually very inside the garden, the park.
Yes.
Okay, and some of them also inside the residence houses, right? So you're
Yeah.
going to see everything tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Oh, okay. So actually, we're still waiting for Antariksa because Antariksa.
Okay. So I
I'm
like
here.
Oh,
to.
you're here.
Okay. Ready? Okay. So
Yes, hi, Dick.
I will be the listener from now.
Okay.
I will be the listener from now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kanki Sensei.
So see you
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a nice lunch, and also for the workshop participant, I hope you're having a very good discussion, and at least you're not really confused about what to do for today and the next day. But don't worry, we still have like 3 more days, right, until the presentation day on Saturday. So today we are inviting to a resource person, which is very, of course, they're very resourceful, very smart, and very experienced in their in both respective field. So the first one, we're going to have a presentation from Antariksa. So Antariksa is actually is a good friend of me. Oh yeah, by the way, my name is Elisa Sutanudjaja. I'm director for Rujak Center for Urban Studies, who's also working together with Kyoto University with Kanki Sensei, who's been doing this international field school and also conference for 3 years. This is our third year actually. So yeah, let's get back to introduce Antariksa again. So Antariksa is a researcher, and he also a co-founding member of KUNCI Cultural Studies Center, but I oftenly mistake introducing his organization all the time. I always say KUNCI Cultural Studies, and he always adding center. But now KUNCI has a new name, KUNCI Study Forum and Collective. But you never really inform me, Antariksa. Once I tried to correct it, Vidya. Vidya, I think the name is mistake. Are you sure? But Vidya said, no, it is a new name coming from Antariksa. Okay, then. So KUNCI based in Jogja. So it's an interdisciplinary collective research with a critical knowledge production. So I copy paste this from KUNCI website. And it's an action research and artistic intervention, also vernacular education. And they have a very have a education program. It's a school for mischief, if I'm not mistaken. Antariksa, what is the
School of Improper Education.
Ah, yeah, my School for Improper Education, yes. So I met Antariksa perhaps 11 or 12 years ago. I think so around that time, right? So I remember one time he presented KUNCI's project about community museum, and I was particularly amazed by the eagerness of the Kampung residents to share their story from their history, their daily life, traditional medicine, and also the receipt. So Antariksa, I think we have like around 45 minutes, right, Vidya? I have to ask the headmistress again.
30 minutes, Mbak Elisa.
Oh, sorry, 30 minutes for Antariksa, and then after that we have Q&A, right?
And after Mas Antariksa 30 minutes, and then we have the second session from Janet Pillai, also 30 minutes, and then we have Q&A session.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so I guess your time start now, and please, Antariksa, you can present, then I will introduce Janet later. Okay.
Should I? Thank you, Elisa. But should I speak in Bahasa Indonesia or in English?
So we have translator actually. I think you can speak in Indonesian because. Sorry.
I don't mind with both. Hello.
Okay, you can do both. You can do both. Hello.
Then there is a kind of delay, maybe.
Hello.
In your speaker.
Can you hear us?
Vidya, can you
yes,
hear me?
There's a delay.
Okay, then. Hi, everyone. My name is Antariksa. First, I need to apologize for the organizer, of course, because I suppose they expect me to present what Elisa said about KUNCI's project, and it's supposed to be a lot of images, videos, photographs, and so on and so on. But since 2 years ago, I moved to Australia, so I don't have access to my computer at the office in Yogyakarta. So I just, maybe for this presentation, I will tell you stories and some, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 diagrams, how we work. And later on, you can check some links in our website. Hopefully we can, you can get some more information about projects, what we've done before about a community history project. But Vidya, can I share screen? Hello?
Yeah, I think you can share your screen. Can you do that right now?
I think so. Let me check. Give me a second, sorry.
Do we lose Antariksa?
Oh, yeah. Where is it?
Okay, so maybe while we wait for Antariksa, should I introduce Janet? Oh, he's back.
I'm back. I'm just trying to share my screen.
Okay, can you do that? I think I already allowed all participants to can share.
All right. Oh, I cannot really. Maybe I share it to you,
Yeah,
and then you.
sure. I will share it. Okay.
And maybe Elisa, you can start with another longer introduction so I can share this stuff.
Okay, okay. Actually, I haven't really prepared anything longer because I thought my introduction about you is already long enough. Okay, while we wait, I also introduce Janet actually. So Janet Pillai from, is it if my pronunciation is correct? I'm not really sure. Janet Pillai. She's from School of the Arts from University Sains Malaysia in Penang. Actually, this is the second time Rujak invites Janet within these 2 months, and I think last month she gave a very good presentation for community members in Kampung Aquarium. But unfortunately, I'm having a family occasion. I was having a family occasion at the time, so I cannot attend. And good thing that we invite Janet again. I finally I can watch her presentation. So Janet is also a senior lecturer at the School of the Arts. I already mentioned that. And she is also a researcher, practitioner, and also an activist in the field of arts and culture. So I think everyone who's working in the cultural field, I think is her book, Cultural Mapping, a guide to understanding place, community, and continuity, is like a must-have book for all of us. And she just revised the book, so I encourage you all to buy her second book. It reminds me that Rujak also have to buy the second edition book as well. So after this, Janet. So in the meantime, Antariksa, are you ready now?
Yes, I'm ready. I already sent the PDF file to it. Well, that's just nice words to quote. But, well, I studied philosophy and then studied history a little bit. And that's, I think, give you a little bit background why we are at KUNCI interested into like doing alternative way of history, of historiography, particularly since we work a lot with the community. So we kind of challenge ourselves how we can do things. Doing so, we have to do it in different way with what's already done by academic historian. So we kind of inspired by this philosophy, by these words by Paul Thompson, English historian, from this book, Voice of the Past. You can read it yourself, but maybe we can move to the second layer, second slide. So since 2002 to 2018, we with our group, we did several community history projects. By community history project is not only, it doesn't mean that it's only related with the history of the community, but it's related with how the community create their own history. So we did what we call as participatory history projects in these 4 projects that you can see in the screen. So maybe I will tell you a little bit story of these projects one by one, and later on you can check to that link that I provide in this slide. So the first one, Community Archive Center, 2002 to 2008, this, I think, what Elisa mentioned before when we first met, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, but I don't have images and videos to present here. Hopefully you can find it in our website. But let me give you a little bit background. Kampung Juminahan is located in a slum area. The inhabitants of this kampung in the past mostly were prostitutes and people who related to prostitution business in Yogyakarta. So historically, this kampung, by middle class of the city, always seen as the source of the problem for the city. So it's kind of the sameness of Yogyakarta is Kampung Juminahan. So we work with this community since early 2000, and we tried to kind of give community a kind of agency. So how are we doing it? So I started to work with a group of teenagers and kids, and we started to train them with basic skills of oral history, how you do interview, how you do interview with filming, how you do how you collect objects, and so on and so on. And the idea was at the time to give the community a sense of belonging to their own place, to their own community, so they can have, they can be proud with their own community. So, and the end, I will tell you more step by steps in the next slide. But the end result of this project was the community archive in this kampung. Why community archives? Because most of the members of the community, they don't have of modern archives and a kind of modern certificates that enable them to get access to social services. For example, 100 of newborn babies, they don't have a birth certificate. And because they don't, why they don't have birth certificate? Because, well, their mother is prostitute and they don't know how the father was. So by law, if you're not married and you cannot identify your father, it is almost impossible in Indonesia to get birth certificate. So we started to get, to track down family history and collecting evidence and so on with the community, and use this evidence to negotiate with the local government. So finally, all of these kids now get a birth certificate, so they can get access to social services, health, education, and so on and so on. So, and we collect all of this evidence. It could be like certificates, it could be a diverse range of archives in this community center. We, as a center, we digitize them and we only keep the digital archive. So that's the idea why community archive. I explain you more later. And then in 2006, we did another community history project with this Kampung Gondomanan in Yogyakarta. It's basically the history of economy of this kampung, because this kampung is actually located in the very center of Yogyakarta, and it's this area. So we work with Chinese community in this area to track down every single businesses in this kampung and its history. And then the end result of this project was booked and exhibition one in this in a commercial art gallery and one in the community center. And then in 2009, we did a very similar project, but involving more artists with this project. And it's particularly about Indian community in Yogyakarta. You can see more about this project in the link. Let me check this chart. Oh, okay, nothing's really important. And then the last one, 2015 and 2018, we did another project, community history, in two kampungs, Ledok Tukangan and Ledok Timoho. But this subject of this community story was very specific. It's about violence and killing in 1965 of this kampung, and 1982, where many people with tattoos and long hair was killed by military regime of Indonesia at the time in the name of cleaning up the city from the trash of the society. That's what the military government said at the moment. And many members of these two kampungs were the victims of that policy in 1965 and 1980s. So we tried to involve younger generation. By doing so, we hope that they get more understanding about the violence and the relation of these two kampungs with the bigger history of the nation. And then we move to the third part. Oh, I cannot really see it. Let me move the window. So this is how, basically how we, can you still see this presentation clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Elisa?
Yes.
Since you moderate this, if you think I need to add more information, you just tell me, then I will answer, because I don't have images or photographs or video. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to explain the way we normally do our community story project with this diagram. So we start with the pink one. So define the project goals. So we normally start with small group of community members to define the goal. For example, let's say we want to understand the history of this particular sculpture or the history of this particular tree in the kampung, and so on and so on. It could be any subjects that community interested. And then move to the second one. After we identify all of these goals, we will have normally big community gathering or big community meeting. Members then share these goals to the community. Well, the basic question that we need to answer for this big gathering with this community normally is whether these goals are important enough for the community or not. That's the main goal that we have. That's the main question that we have to answer in this big gathering, big community gathering. It could be more questions need to answer. And then after that, we move to the third step, which is decide what kind of information based on the goals that we should get. For example, in our first project, maybe we can move to the second one again, the second slide quickly. So the Community Archive Center project, 2002-2008 in Kampung Jominahan. the community decided to create series of subjects that they want to understand about their own history. For example, they want to understand the history of food in their kampung, the history of secret language that they used in 1965 to identify which one is communist, which one is not, the history of river float along the period of time, and so on and so on. And then after they decide what kind of information they should get, what will be the most appropriate way to get this information? So we can do interview, for example, this is just example, interview, filming, collecting archives and objects, mapping, and so on and so on. Interview itself, for example, it's very complicated. You can have one-on-one interview, you can have a group interview, you can have a big community gathering, but at the same time, throw a series of questions, and that's also create different dynamics of the information that you get, because at the same time, one person will check another answers, and so on and so on. And after you get all of this, well, you go then get the informations. The way we did it, normally we ask a younger generation to do the interview at the beginning, and we can start with very small. For example, for like teenagers or children, it's under 15, for example, we can just ask them to interview their own family. So the main resource will be their father, their mother, their grandfather, grandmother, and so on and so on. And we can ask them to start with like very simple question. What was your favorite food? What was your hairstyle in the 70s, and so on and so on. And then after we gather all of this information, now it's get back to the community. You know, we normally will conduct a series of community information that we got, and then that's normally very funny because everyone will like throw new informations or maybe revise another information, and so on and so on. And normally after this, you cannot move to the next step. You normally have to move back to like step number 3, for example. You have to decide again what kind of information that you should get, and so on, and reverse. And then after that, you started to make project reports. Project reports is a kind of, you know, summary. So if you see on the screen on your right, the information you get normally are like thousands or millions of information. More move to the left, the information is getting more condensed. And that's how we make history. That's how historians write history. They condense millions of information. And that's where the problem actually started. So that's why many history books is basically condensation of information. So most of the information regarded less important than others. But in doing a participatory community history project, we need to get back to the community to check again which information is less important than other information. Communities So we always get back to the community. That's also, if I may quote the very first slide of the presentation, this is what Paul Thompson means by giving history to the people, giving people voice. So let people decide which information is important, which information is not. So making project reports means create a kind of summary. It could be in writing format. It could be in a series of photographs, series of objects, and so on and so on, without thinking in advance about how you will present it, but you just summarize it first. And then if you have opportunity, you can move on to project presentation. So it could be in the shape of exhibition, community archive, community museum, festival, etc. And again, moving from project reports to project presentation is another form of condensation. So all of this information, the community history information, again condensed into attractive objects, attractive display. Hello? Can you still see me or no?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can still see you.
Because I cannot see myself. So at this point, we then normally involving, or inviting artists to start to work with the community. And again, when you work with artists, they will have a different way of thinking on how to display, how to present objects, for example, how to present audio archives, how to present photographs, and so on and so on. And it's normally very long negotiation with the community. But at the end of the day, the community itself should be decided. So what I want to say here, the process of condensation of this information is very crucial in this project. In many cases, people like us from middle class educated background tend to push our own agenda and tend to push our own style of condensing historical information from the community and then claim it as the voice of the community. That's, I think, the challenge that we ourselves as a research group also still need to deal with this from time to time. I think I don't have, this is my last slide, actually just 3. So I'm happy if Elisa can ask me a questions so I can explain more, or one of you or 2 of you can ask me more questions. But this is basically.
So maybe Antariksa can, because the last statement that you said that we as a middle class tend to push your own agenda. Can you explain maybe in kind of like an example, what kind of situation that once caught you into and how you solve it?
Okay. For example, well, the context is Indonesian history. If we talk about Indonesian history, we tend to think periodically in military context. So it's like 1945, the independence, and then 1965, the start of the New Order, and 1998, the end of the New Order and the start of the Reformasi, for example. That's the way we think as a middle class. But do a community really think on that way? Apparently no. Apparently no. So this periodical order in academic history or formal history, it doesn't, it means nothing for the community. Community think in completely different way. So they think, for example, in the case of the first project, Juminahan, the way they think is, okay, so the next 5 years, the Mount Merapi will erupt. So we have to prepare ourselves because in the next 5 years, the river is going to float. So what we're going to do? So they think in like different periodical format or periodical style. That's just one example. And then we have to negotiate with the community. Oh, if so, then maybe we can combine, or maybe we can think completely in different way. So that's one example. But in another case, in the very last project that we did about the history of violence, for example, that's a really good example of combination between academic framework of the history of violence in Indonesia, because 1965 was the killing of Communist Party members in Indonesia, and 1982 was the start of the killing of people with tattoos and long hair, the Petrus, penembakan mysterious shooting events in Indonesia. And that really fit into these two communities. So we have our own agenda, but it's also fit with the community agenda. So at the time we can, collaborate smoothly, but it's really rare. In many cases, you cannot collaborate smoothly. You have to, you have to put away, we have to put away our middle class background, and then trying to see it from like community perspectives. And this like back and forth millions of time. You need to back and forth millions of time. It's extremely difficult and time consuming.
So, and some people perhaps they don't like to share like a painful past, like for example with the last Kampung, the one that heavily there's many issues about violence in that Kampung, right? So how to make sure that they share it, but you don't cross the kind of like border between politeness, or sometimes you're afraid to offend people, right? So do you have any experience about it?
Well, there are several tricks and methodology. I will call it methodology. The way who conduct interviews, the one who conduct interviews was not us, but the community itself. So the community members. So it's very different. Let's say if I interview my mother or you interview my mother, the result will be completely different. So that's why we always start with basic trainings with the community, so they can interviewing themselves between each other. So for example, one of the victim, for example, we didn't interview them. We got some information that this family was one of the victims. So we tried to make contact with one of his grandchildren, for example. And then finally, we managed to ask her to be involved with our project. And then she started to interview his grandfather, for example. and the result is very different. That's, for example, just one technique. So we use this notion of intimacy to get more information. And basically the community know themselves more than us. That's number one. Number two is, of course, group interview. That's create completely different dynamics. So if you have one-on-one interview, it's intimate, but no one can check and no one can cuddle you when you get really sad, for example. But if you do it in a group interview, let's say interview with 4 victims in our last case, for example, they can add more information. They can cuddle to each other if they feel sad, and you get more information and you get more dynamics. So you do it in group interview, and then you can also do it in like a big community gathering. That's normally what we did as well. After series of interviews, then we will have big community meeting, and at the same time we ask older generation to share their stories to younger generation. So the historical information and evidence presented directly as a way of a kind of telling stories to your children, telling stories to younger generation. That's the way we do it. But we failed 100 times.
Okay, so maybe I'm going to summarize a little bit for the Kampung Aquarium participants, because on the first day they also gave us a little complaint that, oh, we have so many headaches because we listen to many English. But because jadi teman-teman Kampung Akuarium kan nanti akan memulai ya kayak semacam proyek museum bersama dengan komunitas. Nah, tadi Mas Antariksa dan juga ini juga untuk teman-teman yang peserta yang lain juga, Mas Antariksa tadi memulai dengan kutipan yang sangat menarik yang sebetulnya kurang lebih menyatakan bahwa komunitaslah yang seharusnya memutuskan mana yang penting atau tidak dalam suatu sejarah. Memang tantangan bagi sejarawan kerap sekali, bukan tantangan ya, yang kerap terjadi adalah sejarawan kerap memadatkan informasi yang pada akhirnya menghilangkan informasi tersebut. Dan kalau dalam berhubungan dengan sejarah komunitas, seringnya apa yang dianggap penting oleh komunitas bisa jadi tidak dianggap penting oleh sejarawan, dan begitu juga sebaliknya. Tadi Mas Antariksa menjelaskan contohnya misalnya biasanya kita kalau diajar sejarah yang biasanya kita kan seperti dikenalkan pada periode ya, kayak ala kemerdekaan tahun 45, lalu tahun 65 ada apa, lalu tahun 98 ada apa. Tetapi pada komunitas, terutama tadi yang kampung yang diceritakan Mas Antariksa Juminahan, mereka menggunakan peristiwa yang dekat, jadi kayak peristiwa bencana, misalnya ada gunung meletus, gunung Merapi meletus, maka dalam tempo waktu 5 tahun mungkin akan ada banjir dan sebagainya. Nah, ini mungkin juga agak mirip dengan Kampung Akuarium yang misalnya mengingat masa, yang pas kebakaran yang kapan itu gitu. Mungkin seperti itu ya cara mengingatnya gitu. Malah sejarah yang besar-besar kayak misalnya sejarah pertama kali VOC mendarat mungkin gak relevan buat mereka, atau Soekarno mendarat di pasar ikan walaupun cuma jaraknya 100 meter dari kampung mereka, jangan-jangan nggak penting-penting amat, tapi itu kita bisa juga tanya kepada mereka dan apakah masih mereka ingat. Yang menariknya Mas Antariksa, 5 peserta field school ini kan berasal dari Kampung Akuarium dan semuanya itu adalah generasi muda. Jadi mereka sebelumnya yang istilahnya kalau orang tua mereka lah yang banyak mengikuti acara sebelumnya, atau yang demo, atau yang datang ke rapat-rapat, bahkan yang jadi peserta field school sebelumnya. Yang sekarang ini adalah anak-anak muda gitu, misalnya mungkin pada saat penggusuran itu masih SMA atau SMP gitu. Barangkali ada tips buat mereka kali dalam bahasa Indonesia juga nggak apa-apa biar mereka lebih
tipnya, dan juga untuk kita yang memfasilitasi, mesti berusaha membuat sejarah itu menyenangkan. Itu yang pertama-tama, terutama untuk anak-anak muda ya, karena kita biasanya di sekolah sejarah itu wah penuh tanggal, penuh tokoh-tokoh, nama-nama yang harus diingat, pokoknya membosankan. Jadi sekarang dibikin lebih menyenangkan, dan ini bisa menyenangkan karena temanya nggak hanya perang, tetapi tentang kampung kita sendiri. Jadi salah satu kuncinya adalah, kalau pengalaman saya, memilih subjek yang menarik untuk kelompok-kelompok tertentu. Misalnya, ketika bekerja dengan ibu-ibu, misalnya, mereka tertarik, ini tentu saja stereotyping, tapi itu yang terjadi di masyarakat, mereka tertarik dengan bahan makanan, dengan masakan, dengan pakaian, dan seterusnya. Kenapa tidak mendorong mereka untuk mengeksplorasi tema itu dengan lebih dalam, misalnya? Nah, siapa yang bisa mengeksplor, ya, yang seneng. Nah, anak-anak muda mungkin senengnya apa, gitu ya. Mereka mencari subjek yang juga menarik untuk mereka. Misalnya tadi soal kebakaran. Apa ya, mungkin apa-apa yang hilang, mungkin benda-benda favorit mereka yang hilang. Jadi daripada soal kampung yang sangat besar, kalau misalnya anak muda yang apa yang hilang misalnya. Apa barang kesayanganmu yang hilang waktu kebakaran misalnya. Nah, kuncinya adalah memilih topik-topik yang menarik untuk kelompok-kelompok tertentu. Anak muda beda, nanti perempuan beda lagi, anak-anak nanti beda lagi. Nah, kemudian kunci yang berikutnya adalah memilih atau memperkenalkan metode-metode pengumpulan informasi historis yang menarik juga, gitu. Nah, misalnya wawancara itu kuat sekali, tapi juga sangat sulit sebenarnya. Tidak sekedar dia bertanya, gitu ya. Tidak sekedar kita membuat daftar pertanyaan, kemudian ditanyakan dan kita tahu jawabnya. Tidak semudah itu. Jadi sebenarnya sangat kompleks, tetapi pada saat yang bersamaan wawancara bisa dibuat sangat menarik. Misalnya tadi saya contohkan wawancara yang dilakukan berkelompok kalau di komunitas, gitu ya. Misalnya tadi soal barang-barang anak muda atau barang-barang anak muda yang hilang pada waktu kebakaran. Kumpulin aja anak-anak muda pada yang usianya yang sama, kemudian mulai ngobrolin, gitu ya, direkam tapi tentu saja supaya nanti bisa diringkas dengan lebih baik, gitu ya. Dan ya bisa macam-macam, bisa dikaitkan dengan hal-hal yang menarik, barang hilang, bisa dikaitkan dengan lagu populer yang populer pada saat itu, lagu apa yang mereka ingat, acara radio, acara televisi, dan seterusnya. Tidak semua informasi ini nanti akan kita pakai untuk museum atau arsip, tapi itu sebabnya namanya informasi itu dikondens, diringkas tadi, diperes mana yang benar-benar kita perlukan. Tapi semua informasi ini kita perlukan agar proses ini menjadi menarik, proses ini menjadi milik masyarakat, gitu ya, milik warga, dekat dengan mereka, gitu ya. Dan dengan demikian bisa jalan terus. Jadi kuncinya harus cari cara yang menarik. Dan nanti kalau udah ketemu seniman, kasih contoh, membayangkan nanti objeknya kayak gimana, atau ini jadi video, mereka lebih senang lagi. Oh ternyata sejarah bisa jadi lagu, bisa jadi video, mereka senang lagi. Diperkenalkan dengan sebanyak mungkin metode dan sebanyak mungkin model display, model presentasi.
Ya, jadi teringat ada so sorry for English. So for non-Indonesian speaker, actually you can press the closed caption menu because Nadia also providing an excellent translation from Indonesian English and to English Indonesian. But also it reminds me Antariksa because 3 days ago or 4 days ago there's a protest coming from general public and also historian about Ministry of Culture and Education plan to delay historic class in from the curriculum, right? But then they sort of it's like a misunderstanding as usual. But I understand that not many people are very keen to learn history, maybe because the method is so boring. But actually, my favorite subject during high school is actually history class because I can take a nap. It's a wrong, it's a wrong one. So yeah, any comment about that? Maybe yeah, but you actually already gave nice comments. How can we experience history from the fun perspective, and maybe have to recreate from our perspective as well, and recreate it from the community perspective as well, instead of trying to push the national history agenda to the community, right? So
yang mau saya katakan, cara pandang national history itu sudah begitu mendarah daging di kepala siapa saja kita di Indonesia, tapi juga di tempat lainnya. Itu sudah terlalu mendarah daging, sehingga membuat kita berpikir kalau bikin museum itu harus kayak museum gajah, atau harus kayak museum militer itu, gitu ya. Kalau bikin museum tuh harus kayak gitu. Nah, itu yang harus kita ubah pertama-tama. Nggak harus kayak gitu, gitu. Ada hal-hal lain yang penting untuk kita sendiri, gitu ya. Kita tidak punya kewajiban merepresentasikan sejarah nasional di museum kampung. Kita nggak punya kewajiban itu kerjaannya negara aja, gitu. Nah, itu dulu yang dibongkar, itu ditinggalkan dulu.
Oke. Ya, terima kasih banyak Antariksa. Pas banget, nanti mungkin Antariksa jangan pergi dulu ya, karena pasti ada pertanyaan dan abis ini kita akan lihat dulu presentasi dari Janet. Sekarang jam berapa di sana?
Saya jam 5.
Oh, oke. Belum ini ya. Pas selesai, pas makan malam lagi. Okay, so Janet, are you ready? No, okay. We say thank you first to Antariksa. Give some clap for him, but he still be here because he's going to answer all question or burning question from you, or you can write down the question on chat room to address to Antariksa. But in the meantime, Janet, are you ready? Hello, Janet. Hi. Finally, we met. So yeah, so you have to.
Let me try and share screen.
Okay.
How do I do this? Share.
There's a green arrow next to share screen.
Yeah.
Or
here.
Okay. So you have 30 minutes, Janet. Okay.
How many minutes?
30. 30. Yeah.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see it clearly.
Yes.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, you can see the screen, yeah? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. Okay, I will speak in English, but the PowerPoint is in Bahasa. So today I will talk about the process of mapping and all the steps that are involved in doing a cultural mapping. So those who are doing the museum, it may be useful for you because it's a bit of a slightly technical PowerPoint. So I'd like to start with, first we understand Kampung Aquarium. as a human settlement. And we have to understand that human settlements occur again and again over many periods of time, depending on original settlement and then people from outside coming in and either disrupting or bringing change to the settlement. So the human settlement actually grows from the relationship between human and the environment where they are going to settle down. And there is a lot of interaction with the landscape, the weather, the resources in the settlement, whatever is already there, historical events that happen throughout the period. So over a period of human settlement is made over a long period of time. And so because of this adaptation process that humans who are going to settle down, the way they adapt to the environment or the climate or the resources, sumber-sumber in that place, there is a tendency for the settlement to come out in a particular way. That means it manifests itself very distinctly. So if you are living on a hillside and you start to make a livelihood, and if it's a very wet area, then you grow paddy. So you make your occupation and you mold the environment. And what you get is a very culturally distinct environment. Whereas if you live in a desert, then your materials that you find in the desert are what you build your home with, and your practices, your everyday practices, your cultural practices of how you get your water is completely different from a place that is rainy or has a different weather or different material that the human can work with. And of course, we live in the city, and there is no place, and we are going vertically upwards, and our jobs our occupations are also affected, and our lifestyle, our homes are affected by this compression of space in the city. So culturally, well, I think it's a good thing that we have culturally very distinct human settlements all over the planet. How does this happen? When humans come into a settlement, whether they are migrants from nearby daerah or nearby districts or from another country, when they choose to settle in a place, they want to settle there for a long period of time, the process by which they mold the environment is called placemaking. And placemaking happened in very original settlements, that means early settlements, and it also happens today. If you live in a very high-rise settlement today in Jakarta, you have to maybe end up, buying IKEA furniture, and your placemaking is a different kind of placemaking. You may not, carpenter or make your own furniture, but you might go to a particular kind of place like IKEA, which supplies furniture specifically for small, high-rise apartments, very micro units that you can permutate and combine to fit into your apartment building. So this placemaking process is actually possible because we have to re-look the word culture. So culture is actually a process of adaptation. Also, culture is a product of placemaking. So it is a process of placemaking as well as a product of placemaking. So culture is what makes humans innovative and flexible and able to adapt to the environment. And as we adapt to make a shelter or to make economic or livelihood, to cari makan, or to build social relationships. As we do that, we also leave behind some manifestations of our new way of life. We leave behind, we gain knowledge and we leave behind legacy, which is why culture is both process as well as a product, the legacy that we leave behind. And this is a good thing because we can move into the future and we can learn from our past, the knowledge that we have accumulated by working in that place for a very long period of time. So what are these manifestations or kewujudan? What comes out of the process of placemaking? So we make a built environment, roads, or transport, buildings, parks, public spaces, etc. And we also develop certain practices, certain belief systems, certain ways of cooking. We produce certain types of recipes, we give certain kind of services, and all of it is very related to our environment. I think in the process, we also develop knowledge and skills. So if we live by the coastal area and we are a fishing community, we develop knowledge and skills related to coastal living. If we live in the hills and we plant hill paddy, it is very different from planting paddy in the lowlands. And we have celebrations that are related to new moon or weather or harvesting, or just modern festivals, you know, that are related to, I don't know, birthdays or, you know, particular public holidays, etc. So the longer we live in a place, the more manifestation of that place-making process is left behind in that place. And I think the interesting thing about Kampung Aquarium is that in the process of destruction of the Kampung, many of these manifestation was destroyed. So the sense of place or the sense of community can be destroyed when there is a disruption to our placemaking and there's a disruption to the legacy of culture that we built over a period of time. So we can see in the case of Kampung Aquarium how the spirit of place or the character of Kampung Aquarium before has been destroyed. But we have to think also historically how, if we look back at the archaeological dig or we look back at the submerged fort, Dutch fort that was originally there, we can see these many layers of disruption that happened in that place. Disruption to previous placemaking processes. And we can also see a legacy that was left behind under the water or on the water, or even the legacy of Kampung Aquarium community. Their sense of community is so strong now. While they were able to destroy the physical legacies, they could not destroy the community sense of solidarity. Now, when a placemaking process has been disrupted, very often the government, if they own the land, they want to do it quickly. So yesterday's presentation by Taiwan and Korea were really interesting because they talk about how government likes to work very quickly within the period of the 5-year, term that the government has, and how they would like to leave behind their legacy as a mayor or as a president, and they want to quickly have a showcase, a building. So when they do that, they actually are disrupting or not allowing the community to actually place make. They are giving ready-made place to the community. And this is not good, because ready-made place basically does not respect what is the knowledge or the skill or the lifestyle that the people have already developed. So we see in the case of the Taiwan case study yesterday, how carefully the lifestyle of the tribe was studied by the architect and the planner before they suggest a plan for the relocation of the community. And I think this is something that Kampung Aquarium maybe start on the correct footing, which is through participatory planning. But I personally feel that, you know, participatory mapping should come before participatory planning. So what is participatory mapping, or what is cultural mapping? Cultural mapping is actually important because it is not just spatial mapping, but it is actually mapping human interaction, human relationship with environment over a period of time, and all the knowledge and the skills and the belief system and the practices that humans have developed from living in a particular area. So this is a very humanistic kind of mapping, unlike typical architectural survey. The human aspect or gives priority to the human, everything that is human. So cultural mapping is actually a very systematic way of identifying, recording, and assessing cultural assets and resources that are both tangible, like buildings or products or, you know, recipe, and also intangible, like cooking, ways of thinking, knowledge systems about the sea, about marine life, understanding of how to plant, how to fish, etc. And it's very important that cultural mapping is able to present this evidence in a very integrated manner. So in short, cultural mapping actually helps us to understand the cultural DNA of a place and a community. So why do we map? Firstly, we want to understand the history and the pattern, the cultural pattern of how this community actually grew and evolved, and how they molded their social, economic, and physical legacies in tune to the environment. Secondly, we want to understand the final product, which is the cultural character of this community and the place where they live. And thirdly, we want to assess the attributes of this community and this place, and what is important to them now, and what are the constraints they are facing now, so that we can make in this case, if you're going into planning, if you are going to recommend, if you're going to plan a new building, for example, as in the Taiwan case, how should the plan of this building be so that it can accommodate a lot of the ways of thinking and doing of that community. But in this case, if you're going to use cultural mapping to make a museum, it will help you to plan and make recommendations for the direction of the museum. So mapping is actually the early steps before planning. So we start normally with a review of existing documents, maps, archival material, and then we engage the community. And then step 3, we do collaborative or participatory mapping with the community, and then do analysis of all that has been collected, and then only look at possible planning directions from the evidence of what has been mapped. So who maps? Who are the people who should be involved in the mapping exercise? I think Antares has, and also the the Taiwanese example and Japanese example have shown that a lot of the mapping is actually done by the local community, by local NGO, by academics, and you also have the other parties whom we collaborate with, which is government or professional planners, architects, sociologists, anthropologists, and maybe the landowner, building owners. The gray partners and the orange partner. But participatory mapping is within the community. We also want to, as the case in the, especially in the Taiwanese and the Korean example, we see how they did mapping with children and with women and with the men in the community or the youth in the community. And like Antares said, it is very, very important that each of these subgroups in the community, when they are mapping, they should map things that are of interest to them, that are of, that is part of their occupation or part of their leisure, women's occupation, women's leisure, children's interests. So they may be mapping very different things. And the role of the professional or the government, of course, there is a lot of conflict between these people who think they are very professional and the community. The kind of tools that you use for community or used by community for mapping is very different from the tools that professionals or government use. But actually a combination of the two is very critical, and I will show you why. So here are some pictures of how we have to be very careful with the tools that we are using, and how you can see on the left, it's mainly males who are mapping larger regional areas, in Kenya, and you can see they just use sand on the floor to map, because this tool is the way they think, and the material is very close to them. They can easily draw on the ground. And on the right, you see women making a kind of a simple 3D model. So on what kind of housing and layout, or spatial layout that they would like in relation to the river, which way their house should face, where they would like trees, what the compound should be like, because they spend a lot of time in the house and they use the water a lot. But what is important is that the professionals watching this are actually able to transform these simple maps into more concrete and scaled versions, which is then easier to present to government or to municipality. And this is the role, and also maybe introducing innovations like piping, etc. So collaboration between experts or government agencies and community is very important. But the ground up identification and ideation is very critical to come from the community. So what should we map? As we saw in Antares' diagram, his diagram number 3, it is very important to determine the goal of the mapping. What are you going to use the evidence or the data for? Is it to make a museum? Is it to plan new building? Is it to make many small projects, maybe children's program or women's program? Is it to make a moving exhibition that can go to the schools? So we have to be, the group that is doing the mapping must be very, very clear what is their tujuan, what is their intention, and what are they, who is going to use the data, and what is the purpose of this data, so that the mapping is not so wide and not so unmanageable. So we can choose what attribute that we want to map? Is it sejarah or artifact practices, products, ekspresi budaya, both built as or living expressions, and also the productive factors, resources such as materials, human resources, leadership, social groups, etc. What is it that we need to map for this project that we are thinking of, or for this purpose? And very often there is a tendency to map only what we can see, only the yang ketara sahaja, only the visible. It is very important to also map the intangible. So, and also the different dimensions, the social dimension, the environmental dimension, and the economic dimension. Tools. What tools can we use for mapping? It is actually free for all. You want, if you are an expert, maybe you want to use statistics or very technological tools like GIS systems or drones, or plans, building plans, etc. But if you're working with community, you may want to use more manual kind of tools, drawings, interview, maybe video or recordings, etc. So both the process, so a lot of people feel that mapping that means mapping should come out with a hasil. But actually they fail to see that the mapping process is very powerful. It is very empowering. So during mapping, actually communities' relationship are built because they are interviewing each other. Children are interviewing old people are telling stories, young youth are walking around. Suddenly they start to understand the place and what are the assets or the resources in their place. So they develop a kind of a identity or a feeling of ownership with the place and the people as they map, semasa proses mapping. Also from the mapping, we get to identify and record the cultural assets, the sumber daya, the practices, and the memories of a place. And this data, we can use it later in the museum, we can use it for planning, we can use it for promotion, we can use it for many, many purposes. But it's very important to document it properly. And we can even use the data to assess the place and to make recommendations. So there is steps in mapping. First is to merencanakan or to plan or frame your mapping. Who will map, what will be mapped, what is the goal of the mapping, how will the data or the evidence be used. And then we choose the tools, and then we go out and kumpul or collect the data and we visualize the data. And after that, we analyze and interpret the data and find ways of presenting the data or making recommendation. So what is the difficult part is how do we engage with the community, or how do we get the community to work together and make decision on what should be mapped, how to frame the mapping. So it is important to have maybe like a perantara, a coordinator, or a penyambung masyarakat. If we have this penyambung, then they can arrange for meeting so that the community can come together and discuss what is the goal or the intention of the mapping project, the duration, what will be the activities, and what is the end product. And also consensus building, that the community agree to do this and that they are willing to participate. And what are the different groups? We have to identify all the different groups in the community. And also everybody has to understand the whole kawasan or the whole area. Everybody has to walk the area together and understand who are the different communities, who are the leaders in the different communities, etc. And then we form the team, the different mapping teams. So you can have many mapping teams, but it's very important to have coordinator and somebody who will maybe more expert coordinator who will bring together the data and who will find a way of systematically recording the data and also storing the data in a more systematic way. So the different mapping teams can actually give their data to a central body. Right, and of course you have to, this is a very long process, but a very enjoyable process. It can be done as many small projects. We don't have to panic like, oh, museum must be ready by certain date. Actually, it is not necessary. Museum can be ready over 2 or 3 years. So you can collect from children and from youth. You can collect different subject matters such as sejarah or recipe, or even the whole raid on Kampung Aquarium, the whole historical incident, the terrible incident of the wiping out of the Kampung. All these different materials can be collected slowly through mini project over a period of time. So you can set up museum, but museum can be filled slowly. Like Antares said, it is very important when you start to have a penyataan kebutuhan pemetaan. Review what you already have and have a kind of a need statement. What is the context? What is the issue that I want to map? Or what are the things I want to map? Or what is the purpose? What focus area will I map? And how will I use the data? And then you have to mark the area which you are going to map. And are you going to go to every household? Or are you going to mark specific things on this map that you are going to, maybe the children's group is going to map certain things and the youth group is going to map different things? Are you going to map social information and how social information is connected to environmental information and how that is connected to the economy? So sometimes it's important to look at the different dimension and also element in the dimension. So you might come up with a table like this in sejarah dimension. What are the elements we are going to look for? What is the focus area? And then what are the elements? And what are the things we will collect? Kenangan or an event. And how we will collect it. Is it artifact, photo, document, etc.? So you have to make some kind of table. Otherwise, it will get confusing later. So when you are ready to map and you know you want to map cerita or sejarah or product, you have to find, I think Antares mentioned this, what is the correct tool that you will use? Photography or interview or search on the internet. So you have to be very clear. The little mapping team has to be very clear what tool they will use. So this is like a simple children mapping. On the left side is they map their family. On the right side, they map places that they used to play, but now has become very dangerous for them and they cannot play. So they make notes with sticky note or they take photographs of the places. And this is their data collection and their very rough documentation. And here you have children who use objects like ice cream stick or bottle cover or some bottle cap, and they map some important things in the place where they stay using objects. And then a student, older student, help to take a photograph of this and then make like a map on the computer so that we can keep the record. And here you have a small town which try to map who is the cultural figures in this town. And they use a simple road map, and they take a photograph and they interview these cultural figures in their town, and they make connection using color thread, the type of artist, does the artist have a gallery, or does this historian have books, does he have a book collection in his house, and this is collecting like human resources in the town. Using just simple road map and some photograph and interview. Now, the next stage is when you have collected a lot of data, it is very dangerous because you don't know what to do with the data. So you have to categorize the data and put it in order, in some kind of order, using charta, flow charts, or visual, some kind of visual method, so that it becomes very clear and easy to store or easy to display in an exhibition. So some example, and it's while you're doing it, you will analyze and throw out a photo that is not good, or throw out information that is not good, not useful, and keep the useful information. So again, you must decide what is your visualization tool. Do you want to use a GIS system, a Google Map system, or do you want to use flowchart, or do you want to use comic book to show a story or a storyboard of an event? So, or you want to write an essay? It's up to you. How you want to visualize the data as clearly as possible. So here we see the example of a park and the activities in that park using photo collage. And here we see how the documents of an old man were kept very clearly in an inventory with a transcription of everything that he said about each document. And this book, which contains all his documents, tell us a lot about the history of the place. Or we can use a timeline, historical timeline with photographs to organize all the historical information that we have collected, or old photographs that we have collected from people or from archives, so that we can see the story very clearly. Here we have children who have interviewed each house or each shop house, and they took some photographs, and they have some information on the penghuni, or the person who lived in that shop house, and they put it together very clearly in a A4 folder, a simple folder. And we have many of these folders, maybe about 30 or 40 of the whole street. So it is very organized way of visualizing the data, and it can go straight into the museum. Once you visualize carefully, it can go straight into the museum. Here we use a plan, a building plan, to show where people gather for social, when they come together socially, in the market, building, on the street, when they go shopping, or in the food shops, specific Chinese food shop or Muslim food shop. This is where the community meet socially, or where they have street celebration, festival on the street. So there are many ways of visualizing your data. Here we have land use pattern, the different kinds of businesses in the street, and we can show which business is more dominant and which business is a small business. So, apakah hasil, or what are the outcome from cultural mapping? By collecting all this evidence, we are able to show the character of the place. We are able to show what are the assets and resources of this place. We are able to show whether which because the community identified the assets and resources that they feel are important. So we know that how valuable certain things are to them. I remember once when we asked children to map the assets of a place, they quickly ran to the kedai, I don't know how you say in Bahasa Indonesia, but the pet shop where they sell fish and scorpion and cats and dogs. And they said this shop is very important. We must keep this pet shop in our town. And also, cultural mapping helps you to understand what yesterday the professor from Taiwan explained, which is the ecology of the place, how human and the place relate, how humans relate to the physical ecology, and how the physical ecology has been changed or adapted by the human. And we can use this data in many ways to make museum, a local museum. We can use it to have moving exhibition, to go to schools. We can use it to make a community newspaper, because we have so much information. So we can work with designer slowly over time and produce many products from this collection of data. We can make trail maps, and the children can carry out the trail because they map, so they understand everything in the map. Although the map, to make the map, we have to kind of collaborate with adult designers. And that's the end of my presentation. For those of you who want to know a little bit more, I just leave this slide for a short while, because it's the book on cultural mapping, in case you want to order it from Gerak Budaya di Malaysia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Janet, for a very thorough presentation. So I think by the time workshop participants receive your PowerPoint, especially for Kampung Aquarium residents, they can start their own cultural mapping together with us. It's very thorough and like step by step, and it's very clear explanation. Yeah, and then I thought Gerak Budaya also have a branch in Indonesia as well, right? Do you also?
Maybe, I'm not sure. I will find out.
Okay. So it's because it will be.
Yes, it's Jogja.
Yeah, so I hope that your book is available here as well, so it's easier. So, yeah. Okay, so untuk teman-teman akuarium dan peserta lainnya, nanti memang ada PowerPoint yang tersedia, jadi teman-teman bisa membaca lagi, terutama untuk teman-teman akuarium. Dan dari yang disampaikan oleh Ibu Janet tadi, sebenarnya itu sangat jelas sekali tentang bagaimana cara kita melakukan culture mapping. Cuma yang saya ingin highlight, yang saya ingin tekankan itu sebetulnya tujuan kenapa kita melakukan culture mapping, kenapa proses perwujudan istilahnya placemaking ya, tadi penciptaan ruang itu penting dalam bagaimana kita merasakan rasa kita ada di rumah, sense of place ya, atau karena misalnya manusia begitu dia hidup di suatu tempat, dia akan beradaptasi pada ruang itu, pada rumahnya, lalu pada hubungan sosial yang terjadi dengan tetangganya, kegiatan ekonomi yang terjadi. Dan pada saat kita melakukan adaptasi tersebut, kita meninggalkan sesuatu dan sekaligus juga belajar sesuatu. Nah, hasil dari penciptaan ruang atau placemaking tadi itu bisa berbagai macam, entah itu bentuk ruang, lingkungan terbangun, bisa bangunan, tapi juga bisa tradisi, resep masakan, lalu ada praktek tertentu, cara berjualan dan sebagainya. Dan semuanya itu terkait dengan lingkungan kita dan landscape tempat kita tinggal. Nah, kalau misalnya kita tinggal di pesisir, tentu apa yang dihasilkan pada saat kita menciptakan ruang tersebut akan berbeda dengan yang misalnya kalau kita tinggal di bukit, di dekat pesawahan. Pasti akan ada upacara berbeda, tradisi yang berbeda. Nah, semakin lama kita tinggal di suatu tempat, maka semakin banyak proses kita memanifestasi memanifestasi hal tersebut gitu. Nah, memang pada saat penggusuran paksa untuk kasus Kampung Akuarium, memang rasa ada sense of community yang bisa hilang, bisa hancur. Tapi kalau kita melihat pada saat penggalian kemarin, mungkin teman-teman di Akuarium kan lihat ya langsung ya bagaimana hari pertama menggali sekian, lalu makin turun lagi, makin besar, dan akhirnya ketemu fondasi bangunan penelitian zaman Belanda, zaman kolonial. Nah, tapi di saat itu kita juga melihat layer-layer lapisan-lapisan yang lain, misalnya lapisan strukturnya rumah Pak Teddy atau rumahnya siapa ya, yang bagian yang terbakar dan sebagainya. Jadi walaupun tempatnya hancur, tapi untuk kasus Kampung Akuarium justru rasa komunitasnya bisa menguat karena saat itu juga jika melihat dari rentan sejarah yang panjang, ini ada perjuangan yang terjadi bersama yang justru menguatkan rasa komunitas tersebut. Nah, selanjutnya Janet banyak menjelaskan soal bagaimana cara melakukan cultural mapping dan sebenarnya memberikan masukan yang cukup baik. Karena selama ini, selama hampir 4 tahun, proses yang terjadi di Kampung Akuarium memang lebih banyak didominasi oleh proses perencanaan bersama. Memang ada masa-masa dalam workshop yang kita lakukan bareng-bareng ini kerap melakukan pemetaan budaya, tapi seharusnya kita harusnya melakukan pemetaan budaya dulu, barusan melakukan perencanaan. Nah, tadi kalau but I think Janet is okay, right? We can go back and forth even though we already have this participatory planning, then we still can go back to participatory cultural mapping, right? It doesn't have to be A to Z, but we can go back and then do another planning. But the most important thing now, we have time maybe after the whole long process of planning, then we can also sit back and then do the mapping as well. Ya, jadi itu yang saya bisa rangkumkan dan so right now we can go to the Q&A session. Kita bisa masuk ke proses tanya jawab. Saya sebenarnya ada beberapa pertanyaan yang sudah masuk, tapi saya juga ingin mendengarkan dari Kampung Akuarium. Barangkali ada pertanyaan? Halo? Tadi siapa, ada teman-teman dari Kampung Akuarium, ada Badria, ada Aat, ada Indri, ada Fiklin, ada Raka. Barangkali ada pertanyaan, saya memberikan kesempatan dulu. Atau selagi diskusi di saat ini teman-teman di Kampung Akuarium mereka sedang ada di semacam ruang kumpul bersama gitu untuk belajar bareng gitu di proses field school ini. So 5 community members from Kampung Akuarium now they gather in community space which is just built maybe like 5 days ago because now they have to move their temporary shelter to new place. So now they are very flexible in how they utilize the space. Maybe we can wait for them, but I can also, there are some questions as well from here, from Dr. Riawan. I'm not sure whether whom he addressed the question. I mean, okay, maybe I will. Yeah. In the Indonesian context, mapping and planning usually designed structurally under the regulation of spatial planning from the national government to the provincial government, and according to him, and his question, what is the problem with this kind of mapping and method, which is usually structure and based on the hierarchy towards to the cultural local heritage? Maybe this question can be answered by by Janet, and maybe if Antariksa also want to answer, is okay as well.
Yeah, I think I don't know whether Dr. Riawan was present at yesterday's case example by the by the Korean professor, where they did something very out of the box, very controversial, where the community who carried out the cultural mapping in collaboration with the NGO and the academic, they actually dare to come up with a master plan. So this master plan is an alternative master plan to the typical government master plan. And they actually presented their community master plan to the government. So I have tried this more on small scale, where the government requests a master plan, and normally they will ask a consultant to do the master plan, but we tend to come up with the cultural mapping study and contribute to the master plan. So you have to be quite brave to break into the hierarchical, very spatial type of planning, a very physical type of planning that is done by the government. And I think it is possible, but if communities are not ready to do this, then it poses a problem. By communities, I mean communities led by NGO, in collaboration with some academics and professionals. Maybe Antariksa, you have anything to add?
Not really. I give you maybe a little bit example with this birth certificate. Not particularly about mapping, but we experienced that the government asked us for several government approved certificates or documents for people to get their birth certificate. But we then negotiate with the government, but the community don't have that kind of certificates. They don't have that kind of formal administrative history alongside the government history. They don't have that. So, but it took really long time to negotiate this. So little by little, we provide alternative evidence. For example, to prove that someone actually has a family, actual family, provide them with series of photographs and then interview with their neighbors and family members and the government. Yeah. At the beginning, they reject this, of course, but once we come back with hundreds of cases, then they cannot say no. Yeah. So it's also depend on how you negotiate and how, in our experience, how you use particular type of language, right, that the government normally use.
I think this is also mentioned yesterday by both the professors, how you work with the legislation, but you give the cultural evidence in not single cultural evidence, but group cultural evidence, and then they cannot run away because cultural mapping gives you evidence, solid evidence. And that evidence is actually an alternative to the standard way in which they receive evidence. Yeah. So it is important to negotiate, to produce the evidence.
Okay, interesting, because the story of Antariksa remind me 2 years ago, maybe almost 2.5 years ago when the community negotiate whose people that can live inside the temporary shelter, because again they have to show the ID card, and because of the eviction most of them lost their certificate, the ID card, because the government decided to freeze the ID card. So we have to negotiate, and then even the community leader, the head of RT now, he has to give a personal guarantee to government that he's really the member of community. So it's really, and I think it's also important history from my side, because oh my God, how come the government deny whether this person really exists? Yeah. It's and then it's also personal. It's also moving experience as well. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think maybe if Ibu Dharma Diani also present or Patopas also present here, maybe they can tell a story about at that time. But apparently they are not in the participant list. But now I have so many questions on the chat room. So maybe we go back to the question first. I have question for both of the speakers. This one from Vidya. As you know, the working long-term project with community can be tiring. Do you have any ideas how to keep the spirit of the community high, especially for community that in taking their culture and history as something taken for granted? Second question, Janet said earlier about whether community readiness. How do we consider if the community is ready or not? In Jakarta or Indonesia, there is a lot of community with different internal social condition, and many of our project end halfway. Okay, so for maybe for Janet first, and then Antariksa second.
I think there is no question that this kind of projects is very long term. But I think the examples that Antariksa gave, and also the examples from Korea, the Busan examples, actually are very good, because what happened is you treat every project, every part of the big project as a mini project. So then the community is very excited, because if they are just doing the identity card, right, that part of the project is completed after 1 year, and they see some result, and then they go on to the next one and the next one. You cannot see cultural mapping as being done wide and, you know, collecting a lot of information with no output, no outcomes. It is impossible. People will get very bored. So it's very important that if the housewives or the women are doing a particular project, or the fishermen are mapping something, there are different coordinators who make sure that each project is manageable within a duration of time, and it has an output which can already be promoted or exhibited, or, you know, reach some kind of negotiation with the government on that small scale. So maybe the word to use, but I don't know in Indonesian, is it's iterative. You know, it is iterative and it's scaffolded, each with its own beginning and ending. It's not one big project. And we see that very clearly in the case of the Busan project, where they have many things ongoing, you know, one after the other. Antariksa, you have anything?
I do agree with Janet, and that's fit to our experience as well. We created many side projects, not the final one, let's say the museum or festival, but created as many as possible mini side projects. For example, the last project about 1965 and 1980s violence of Indonesia with 2 kampungs, during the interview between community members, we also invite artist photographer came with us, and then at the same time, he created a series of family photographs, for example. And it could be done in 1 week, and give back all of this family photograph to the family, and they have something to hang. They're happy. Then we can continue series of interviews. So you can create small stuff during the duration of the project. It could be 3 years, 5 years, but it doesn't really matter. Create like small projects.
And I think to add on to Vidya's second question about how some communities, many projects end halfway because the community is tired or the community wasn't ready to do the project. Actually, this is where I really want to stress the importance of artists, because artists know how to make this family portrait or this identity card. So there is a presentation of the data in a way that the community understand. Whereas if you're just a planner, you have a planning mind. You cannot understand what community appreciate. You are thinking what government needs or what government appreciates. So you are trying to produce data which has no meaning for the community. So even while you're collecting historical data or personal identity, as you say, it is very important that the artist is able to do presentation, transform it into a presentation format for the community, and the expert, the professional, the other type of expert, the more bureaucratic, presentation to the bureaucracy. If you don't have these two, community get very turned off fast, and it has no meaning for them.
I need to add one more, but maybe I will talk in Bahasa Indonesia because this is exactly for, I think, Kampung Akuarium members. Juga penting di Indonesia banyak sekali kegiatan rutin, aktivitas rutin yang bisa dimanfaatkan. Dalam kasus kami misalnya, ibu-ibu itu setiap bulan punya satu arisan. Lalu di kampung setiap habis sholat Jumat itu ada kumpul-kumpul. Bapak-bapak setiap malam ada ronda. Nah, kita bekerja mengikuti pola aktivitas yang selama ini masyarakat sudah ada. Jadi misalnya selama ini ibu-ibu arisan saja. Nah sekarang ditambah arisan sama misalnya sebelum arisan ada satu mbah-mbah yang cerita kepada anak-anak, dulu kampung ini kayak gimana, cerita. Senang sambil cerita macam-macam baru mulai arisan. Atau setiap ronda misalnya dikasih satu foto setiap malam. Ini ada satu foto yang kita temukan. Setiap satu malam satu foto saja, bapak-bapak diskusi satu foto misalnya. Tapi kita menggunakan aktivitas yang masyarakat sudah biasa. Jadi itu dimanfaatkan tanpa harus membuat sesuatu yang baru lagi.
Ya. Wah, itu tips dan triknya buat teman-teman Kampung Akuarium nanti ya. Saya juga akan bacakan komentar. Ini bukan pertanyaan, cuma karena ini direkam, jadi saya bacakan karena kan teksnya nggak muncul ya. Specifically on buildings, oftentimes as in Kampung Akuarium, a new reality is being imposed on an environment. The new walk-up apartment blocks being built soon. This one is comment from Marco. I hope Kampung Akuarium do not forget to get hold of the maps of the new buildings, which are technically called as built drawings, where the pipe are, where the drains go, etc., where the structural column that might be hidden in the wall. So the duration of the mapping should also be situated within the overall duration of larger goal that could be made much shorter because of good sense of belonging and clarity that are produced through the mapping. So actually, I also open an opportunity for anyone who want to ask question by raising hand. So I can, you can unmute your mic as well. Or any question from Kampung Akuarium residents? You can ask question in Indonesian language. Don't worry, I will translate as good as possible. And we have Nadia as well here to translate. Or from the participant?
While they are planning a question, I actually want to comment on Marco's. I've been living in an apartment for 25 years, and I cannot find any of the architectural drawings, and I'm so frustrated because I cannot repair anything in my apartment. And it is interesting. It's a very middle-class apartment. So because I'm very concerned about piping and electricity being done in the correct way. So what happened is with other residents, even though they are middle class and very highly educated, they just break everything and just redo it. So actually I want to say to Marco, it is the same problem. Even if you get the drawings and you keep the drawings, it is not going to make sense to the community. So again, you need an artist or a creative person to actually mediate and help community to be able to read these pipes and these electrical drawings in a fun, with a different mind. How do they view, because if they're not in construction, for them it's just break it and make a connection and let it come outside the wall or something like that. So it's really important that the as-built drawings are translated in a very fun way through a fun exercise for them to understand. Then, which brings me to the issue of management. A lot of the time we are collecting a lot of data, whether it's our own identity, or we are collecting history, or we are making a museum, or we are making a trail. But actually, a lot of times we drop the community without putting in the management factor. How will the community manage the museum? How will the community manage their building? This must also be part of the planning. It's really important.
Actually, Rika raised hand. Vidya, can you unmute Rika? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, good.
Ya, saya mau tanya dalam bahasa Indonesia aja. Ini sebenarnya praktikal banget ya. Jadi saya mau tanya ke Janet dan Antariksa, dan juga thank you sebelumnya gitu sudah memberikan banyak sekali wawasan dan tips, trik dan cara-cara melakukannya. Tapi karena sekarang kita ini di masa pandemi dan semua kegiatan yang tadi Anda tekankan itu terlibat atau engage itu berjarak atau lewat online. Jadi saya mau tanya, kalau ada pengalaman dengan cara terlibat secara online dengan masyarakat, itu ada nggak tips dan trik tertentu?
Ada.
Apa? Enggak, soalnya kan saya kan kunci kan banyak.
Do you need me to translate? Or
okay.
I don't need a translation. No. It's okay, I understand.
Ada, saya punya dalam kasus.
Maybe I need to translate.
Oh, oke. Okay. Aku jawab bahasa Indonesia atau Inggris? Indonesia ya?
Indonesia aja, buat biar yang lain yang di kampung juga paham gitu.
Ada sekarang dalam contoh kasus proyek kunci
bahasa
terakhir.
Indonesia aja.
Dalam contoh 3 proyek kunci yang terakhir, karena semua sekarang orang sudah pakai HP, dan sekarang ini kampung-kampung di Indonesia semua punya punya WhatsApp group. Jadi kalau mau dekat dengan orang kampung ya harus ikut grup mereka. Tapi itu tidak mudah. Jadi biasanya admin di kampung itu akan add kita ke grup. Nah, itu adalah ultimate evidence that they accept us. Kalau sudah dimasukkan ke WhatsApp grup kampung. Dan biasanya WhatsApp grup kampung itu ada macam-macam. Ada bapak-bapak, ada grup ibu-ibu, mungkin ada grup remaja. Nah, itu cara ya online engagement sekarang ini. Tapi ya biasanya itu nggak cukup. Tapi ya sekarang keadaan susah ya, kita nggak bisa datang ketemu secara fisik. Saya kira itu satu-satunya, mungkin salah satu, bukan satu-satunya, salah satu cara untuk bisa engage dengan warga sekarang ini. Pengalaman saya itu di luar itu saya belum punya.
Oke, jadi ketika engage dengan warga itu, apakah kita juga mengajukan pertanyaan yang sama? Misalnya, apakah punya kenangan dengan barang-barang hilang? Itu gimana cara engage-nya melalui WhatsApp group? Contohnya?
Sebenarnya itu tergantung posisi kita. Rika bekerja sebagai fasilitator atau Rika tinggal di Kampung Akuarium atau gimana? Maaf, saya tanya sedikit.
Iya, nggak, saya mahasiswa, saya tinggal di Berlin.
Wah, susah, nggak ada kampung di Berlin.
Tapi saya pernah waktu itu pernah penelitian di Kalibata City, dan itu menarik memang, saya dimasukkan oleh kontak person saya ke WhatsApp group. Tapi memang susah untuk kemudian tiba-tiba bertanya. Waktu itu kan misalnya bagaimana misalnya bagaimana warung apa yang Anda, kalau makanan tuh gampang pasti pada jawab. Cuma kalau udah yang krusial kayak misalnya siaran radio apa yang pada dengarkan, itu biasanya yang jawab ya yang iseng aja. Tapi gimana kira-kira pengalaman buat teman-teman yang lain juga?
Kalau pengalaman saya, ini belum pandemi tentu saja. Pengalaman saya ikut di WhatsApp group itu pertama yang lebih diutamakan adalah banyak mendengar. Apa yang digunakan, isu-isu apa yang menarik. Dan ingat, kita melakukan proyek ini bukan ya kita orang luar yang mau meneliti, ini komunitas yang mau meneliti. Jadi tugas kita, menurut saya, adalah memfasilitasi supaya masyarakat atau warga sendiri yang memunculkan pertanyaan, bukan kita. Bukan kita yang mengajukan pertanyaan, tapi mendorong warga supaya memunculkan banyak pertanyaan yang bisa mereka elaborasi bersama-sama. Tapi kalau kasusmu yang kamu yang melakukan penelitian, wah saya nggak tahu, tuh saya belum punya pengalaman itu. Pasti susah saya bayangkan kalau melakukan penelitian, tiba-tiba warga ditanyai, dulu sukanya makan di mana mereka? Oh siapa lu? Gitu pasti.
Okay, yeah, so any answer or tips from Janet perhaps?
Okay, saya sekarang ada satu projek di komunitas di Kuala Lumpur, dan komunitas ini memang sudah ada WhatsApp group sendiri. Jadi I'm happy to report that saya dijemput untuk masuk WhatsApp group mereka. Tetapi saya just hello, nama saya siapa, dan saya hanya jawab okay, thumbs up, atau so saya tak tanya soalan, saya tak minta favor, atau I don't use their WhatsApp group to do any kind of interview or anything, but I just become a friend who respond to whatever they are talking. And after some time, they recognize me as a member of the WhatsApp group. So if I have anything urgent, macam orang tak datang meeting, baru saya guna WhatsApp group mereka. But I actually don't conduct any business on the WhatsApp group. Yeah, but it's this this bigger entity. Yeah.
Okay. Finally, we have a question from community member from Kampung Akuarium. So, apakah mempertahankan komunitas cukup dengan membuat kegiatan bersama saja? Is it? Are there really else? Are there any way to community other than making activities? So I try to translate it to non-Indonesian participant. So, Antariksa or Janet would like to answer that?
Janet dulu nih, pertanyaan untuk orang tua.
Oh my God.
think there are two ways to engage with community. One is melalui the project atau activity bersama dengan komunitas. But the other is actually, because we are third party, we are from in the community and socialize with them is very, very critical. Even if you become a temporary member of that community, it's just a norm. You cannot be like a professor, you know, come for activity and then go out. It's impossible.
Kalau jawaban, kalau untuk orang luar, untuk Aat ya, jawabannya. Kalau untuk orang luar, apa yang dikatakan Janet, itu benar. Jadi menurut saya kuncinya adalah menjadi teman untuk komunitas. Menjadi teman itu kan artinya nggak hanya datang kalau perlu, kadang-kadang ya cuma nggak perlu, nggak ngapa-ngapain, nongkrong aja, minum, main kartu, atau benerin sepeda, gitu ya. Makin banyak waktu yang dihabiskan, tentu saja makin baik. Kalau dari perspektif orang luar, tapi karena Aat sendiri orang kampung Akuarium, saya waktu di Jogja saya tinggal di kampung gitu. Nah, pertanyaannya mempertahankan komunitas apakah cukup dengan kegiatan bersama? Menurut saya tidak. Gitu. Di kampung saya di Jogja setiap malam ada ronda, setiap 2 minggu ada pengajian, setiap 2 minggu ada arisan bapak-bapak, 2 minggu berikutnya arisan ibu-ibu, 1 bulan sekali ada kerja bakti bersih-bersih kampung. Tapi tetap saja itu tidak cukup untuk mempertahankan komunitas. Saya kira ada yang lebih krusial, yaitu komunitas yang punya, untuk mempertahankannya, komunitas mesti punya, saya kira, tujuan bersama, atau kalau tidak, musuh bersama. Itu yang mempertahankan komunitas menurut pengalaman saya. Misalnya dalam kasus kampung saya, 2 kampung di sebelah saya, itu sudah penuh hotel, gitu ya. Nah, warga kampung menganggap hotel-hotel dan turisme secara umum adalah musuh. Semua orang setuju. Nah, itu menyatukan warga. Kita harus menjaga kampung kita supaya tidak jadi kayak Prawiro Taman misalnya. Nah, ada musuh bersama. Atau tujuan bersama gitu. Kita mau kampung kita tahun depan jadi juara penghijauan satu kota Yogyakarta misalnya. Nah, jadi ada musuh bersama atau tujuan bersama.
Yeah. I think that's why if we look at the case from Busan, from Korea, and the case from Taiwan, in both cases, the first thing they do when they map is they map very critical needs of that particular community, either the elderly. So you remember they gave the laundry room, the shower, etc. to the community. Because when you identify that common need, whether the children want a common playground or the elderly want a laundry machine, you know, or they want some transport where they don't have to climb the hill, you know, so steep. As soon as they attack the common need together, then and they finish that project. That's the important thing. They will build relationship while they are trying to finish that goal, that one goal, like the laundry room.
Okay, so I think this is going to be. Because it's a very lively discussion. I really like it. So yeah, This is from Nikan, and Nikan said that, have you ever organized a community festival before? Can you tell me the goal of the community festival that you once had? And is it an annual project or one-time project? And how to maintain the sustainability of community museum, so the value and the goals can be kept alive. So many questions actually in one sentence. So Antariksa first or Jared first?
Festivals, yes, and we're still doing it, even though we officially no longer doing the project, but we're still doing festivals. As I mentioned before in Bahasa Indonesia, that we make use what are existing in the community. In Indonesia, in Indonesian context, we have this, of course, Independence Day celebration every year, and people will like literally celebrate. They're doing party, they're doing a lot of events, exhibition, everything. So in a way, this is already exists, and a community has their own resources to keep this annual festival going. So we just need to add some contents to this festival. For example, Elisa knows about this story. In Kampung Juminahan, they created, already almost 10 years ago, the group of children created Tari Banjir, based on the history of river flow every 5 years in their kampung. So they create this kind of dance, and they're still doing this every year. Different kids, different generation, but we maintain to have this story of the river flow into dance, into theater every year, every 17th of August. So I think the key is, make use what are existing within the communities and just strengthen that. That's my experience.
Yeah, I will conclude by saying I agree with Antares that if there is already a festival, it is good to latch on to the existing festival. But normally we work backwards. That means we, when we want to have a festival, we normally work backwards. That meaning we look at different groups in the community and what is exciting to them. Like Antares mentioned, the women are more interested in cooking or crafting or sewing or something. And, I don't know, different group is interested in different things. So we go backwards and we actually encourage these subgroups to produce something that they are very good at. And we say that if you manage to produce this thing, and if you can organize it yourself, you can join the festival with your gang. So that way, we don't have to do much organization or looking for product. We just provide the bigger setting for them to come and set up their private, little hobby. In that special setting, yeah.
Oh, sorry, because I suddenly kicked out from the meeting room. Being kicked out from our own meeting room. Anyway, so yeah, but I think all the questions already answered, right? So maybe I give a chance for both of you to give a closing statement before I give a chance to Kanki Sensei to give her comment. Janet or Antariksa can start first.
For me, I think that when you are mapping and you're mapping towards a goal, make sure everybody in the group really enjoy the process thoroughly. It's not a job. That is my closing.
Good closing. Antariksa?
untuk saya bikin museum komunitas itu bukan proses yang satu kali selesai. Jadi itu proses yang panjang, dan karena panjang ya harus senang. Kalau nggak senang nanti capek. Bikin senang harus yang senang gitu, dan nggak bisa sekali selesai. Mungkin ya pelan-pelan 3 tahun, 5 tahun, 10 tahun juga nggak apa-apa, toh kampungnya sendiri gitu ya, nggak apa-apa. Kalau yang urusan bikin repot, yang susah-susah bikin laporan kan nanti urusannya Rujak.
Okay, so Kanki Sensei are still there? Kanki,
I am back to my university now. Thank you very much for the two really big and impressive lecture. Actually, a little part I just listened to the lecture through my driving car, but now it's okay. And for me, it was so nice to have such a discussion with the Korea and the Taiwan today, actually. And the final, I like to add a little bit of small thing, because originally the how to say, facilitator for the Taiwan case is our Professor Endo, who passed away 3 years ago. And he is also the specialist to make how to say, a children's book with the illustration and very short sentences, and making the history of the community. And he is a specialist with this kind of the publishing activities too. We are used to be the students from him. So I really remembering now, it is very important. And finally, I am very impressed that we must make time to have a good process by the people in the Kampung and the community. Maybe the people outside likes to set some kind of the standard, like a time or styles or the land use of so many things. Each standard will be provided by the outside, but inside the community, we need the process, the times and the speed of our own. And so it is quite a basic thing, but very important democratic way, I think. So thank you very much. We can learn a little bit more cases, maybe in other countries or in the cultural places in all over the world, but basically 2 days, yesterday to today, a lot of things we could learn. So maybe we need a time in Kampung Aquarium, and at the same time in the Kampung Jakarta too. They already had time and spent so many time, but we need time more, and to compete with the pressure work from outside. So I understand now. So let us continue something. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kanki Sensei. So tomorrow we still have 2 lectures, and again thank you for Antariksa and Janet. We will still have 2 lectures tomorrow at 1 p.m. Jakarta time again. Coming from Muko City. Suddenly I forget his name, Kanki Sensei. He's a government official who's responsible for Muko City and Heritage Site, and both of him and Kanki Sensei will give a presentation about Muko City, and then after that I will give a brief explanation about historic urban landscape. So it's how we interpret landscape more, how can I say, more dynamic, and not only fixate on the heritage issue. So thank you again for everyone who bear with us. So for the workshop participant, you can find all the material in the Google Drive of today material. But for the public participant, we will put the material and also the video on Rujak website. So maybe wait for another 1 or 2 days, hopefully soon. So you can find the material soon in our website. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.